The room was cold, not by temperature but by intention. Everything inside the observation deck of the Eminence of Order was sterile, angular, and humming with the quiet menace of precision. Commander Kraljek of the Valari Empire stood with his three clawed hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the display that hovered in front of him. Behind the glass, strapped to a chair with energy restraints, was the human female. She sat without expression, not rage, not fear, just stillness. Is she sedated? Kraljek asked without turning. No, Commander, said Sub-Technician Vel. She's been fully conscious since capture, refused all rations, hasn't spoken. Kraljek's spines twitched. It was the third day. Most prisoners screamed. By now, at the very least, they pleaded. This one simply watched. The door opened with a soft chime. Centurion Vark entered, battle-scarred and still dripping acidic blood from a fresh wound on his thigh. She took out 6 of my guards before. The net guns caught her, he growled. When used a stun pike, she caught it mid-swing, twisted his arm until the bone cracked like ice. She's not a diplomat. She's trained. She's human, Kraljek corrected, as if that nullified all anomalies. And human resistance is anecdotal, not structural, Vark hissed. With respect, Commander, anecdotal damage still bleeds. Kraljek allowed silence to settle. He studied the woman, her face marked with dried blood, arms restrained, but spine straight. She stared through the glass at him, as if she'd heard everything, as if it was all amusing. He stepped forward. Activate sound bridge, he thought, and the command relayed silently to the ship's AI. You are Madison Cole, Kraljek said, enunciating each syllable with mechanical contempt. Lieutenant, Earth Defense Militia stationed on Outpost 12, Sector Delta 81. No response. Your resistance was admirable, ultimately futile, but admirable. Still nothing. Kraljek narrowed his eyes. Speak, female. She blinked. Slowly, then shifted her gaze to the ceiling as if bored. Your silence accomplishes nothing, he continued. Your outpost was vaporized, your fellow officers dead. You are not a martyr, you are a prisoner. She looked at him again, one eyebrow arching just slightly. I'm not your prisoner, she said. The silence that followed seemed to bend the air. Kraljek's translator lagged for a fraction of a second, just long enough to emphasize the insult. Vel shifted uneasily behind him. I see you found your voice, Kraljek said. Good, that will make this easier. Madison didn't reply. Explain how you breached our internal drone systems, how you caused the West Barracks lockout, and how you accessed restricted schematics of this vessel. I didn't. You lie. I didn't cause anything. Your systems are just vulnerable. She smiled. Honestly, I expected more from a species that calls itself an empire. Vark took a step forward, fists clenching. Kraljek lifted one hand to stop him. This is posturing, he said calmly. Human bravado, cultural overcompensation for anatomical inadequacy. Madison let out a soft laugh. That's rich coming from a species that designed entire honor rituals around permission to blink. Vel flinched. Kraljek's spines bristled. Enough, he snapped. You will be taken to level 17. There, we will extract your knowledge through neural interface. Consent is not required. I know, she said. I read your protocols. Kraljek's throat flexed. He turned to Vark. Scan her again. Confirm no external implants. Already done, Vark said. Nothing foreign, nothing active. And yet, Kraljek murmured, she knows everything. I listen, Madison said simply. You listen, he repeated. To your guards, your comm traffic, your boots. This ship speaks, Commander. You just don't know how loud. Vel was tapping on a hollow slate now, fingers shaky. Sir, he said, someone accessed our engine schematics from a level 4 terminal last cycle. It was traced back to... I know where it was traced, Kraljek snapped. Do not insult me with echoes. Apologies, Commander, Madison shifted slightly in her restraints. You're going to want to disable the inertial dampeners in about 6 minutes. Everyone turned to her. Kraljek's face twitched. Explain. I'm not sure your people understand what a sabotage cascade is, but if I'm right, you'll learn fast. Vark activated his forearm console and began running diagnostics. His mouth opened, then closed again. He looked up. Engine fluctuation detected. Inertial grid has begun autonomous cycling. That's impossible, Vel said. No, Madison said, it's not. Kraljek stormed forward. You did this. How? Madison leaned forward. You really think we built AIs for war and didn't prepare for interrogation? Come on, I'm not here to escape, I'm here to study you. Arrogance, Kraljek muttered. You're bluffing. This is psychological manipulation. Check your vector drift, she said softly. Vel's fingers raced. Commander, the ship, it's rotating. Slight yaw shift on all axes. The inertial grid is being recalibrated in real time. Counter it. We can't. The override isn't responding. Kraljek turned to her. What did you do? I guessed, she said. And you proved me right. He moved forward until his face was inches from the glass. You are not special. You are an anomaly that will be corrected. Madison met his gaze. You're a species that thinks obedience is a virtue. We're a species that turns trauma into strategy. You don't get it, Commander. We grow under pressure. Vark's console beeped violently. We just lost Drone Bay 3. Power surge. Something's routing our systems through unauthorized channels. Madison sat back. 4 minutes. Shut it down, Kraljek barked. Sir, we're trying. Something's replicating our commands and blocking priority access. He turned, back to her. What do you want? Her face turned cold. The smile was gone. You captured me. Now you're asking what I want. Starting to feel out of control? His breath hitched. This isn't a jailbreak, she continued. This is a reconnaissance mission. The lights flickered. The floor hummed. Kraljek made a decision. Initiate full AI lockdown. Purge her access, isolate her neural signature, and shut down any non-native command sequences. Too late, Vel said. The system doesn't recognize us anymore. She leaned forward again, eyes locking with Kraljek's. Ask yourself, what if this wasn't me being captured? What if it was you being infiltrated? His face remained unreadable, but something shifted behind his eyes. For the first time, there was no response. No order, no insult. Just calculation and doubt. Then came the alarm. Warning, the ship's AI said in its flat, dispassionate tone. Primary engine synchronization failure. Structural instability. Imminent. Emergency stabilizers engaged. Madison smiled again. 3 minutes. Kraljek turned and marched out. Move her to isolation. Seal all system relays. Do not speak to her. Do not listen to her. As Vark and his guards entered the room, Madison tilted her head. Careful, she said, looking at one of them. You've got a faulty actuator in that left knee servo. Might blow under stress. He froze mid-step. Checked his leg. It was true. He didn't know how she knew. Vark's voice shook. Take her, now. As they pulled her up, she looked around with calm detachment. The hum of the ship was louder now. The architecture groaned with feedback loops. Kraljek stood outside, silent, watching her pass. She didn't look at him. She just said softly, You built a cage for a creature you didn't understand. And she vanished down the corridor, swallowed by flickering lights and panicked whispers. In the silence that followed, Vel approached. Commander, should we contact High Command? Kraljek did not respond. His mind was still caught on her words. He turned back to the window, stared at the empty chair, then at the crude, half-erased lines etched into the wall. They formed a rough sketch, not of a person, not of a weapon, of the ship, its corridors, its power grid, its blind spots. She hadn't been resisting. She'd been learning. And now, somewhere deep in the eminence of order, that knowledge was in motion. Kraljek clenched his jaw. For the first time in his life, he understood what fear without a face felt like. Vark gripped the command rail, eyes scanning the tactical interface as the ship continued to drift off vector. Autopilot systems flickered. Manual overrides returned with cold rejections. The vessel's central intelligence, once a flawless extension of Valari authority, was now laced with anomalies. Fragments of data looping like echoes, permissions recoded, priorities inverted. It didn't feel like a malfunction. It felt like something else had taken root, something subtle, human. In Isolation Sector 9, Madison Cole sat alone in a hexagonal chamber of null field mesh. No light, no heat, no sensory feedback. Time was supposed to stretch inside the void, degrading awareness, breaking focus, but she remained still, focused, listening. The chamber's electromagnetic pulses echoed like a heartbeat, faint, but rhythmic. The drones outside weren't quiet, neither were the guards. She'd mapped their patrol patterns by footfall resonance alone. Every little thing on this ship was measurable, predictable, pattern-driven. That was their weakness. Kraljek stood in the central command tower, arms folded behind him, tail twitching. His mind was racing in disciplined patterns, but deep inside, something had gone off script. He was trying to quantify her actions, trying to force human chaos through the Valari filter of rank and order. It wasn't working. "She doesn't match our simulations," Vel said quietly beside him. "Not even the advanced threat profiles." Kraljek didn't look at him. "She was never part of our data models. None of them were. Their unpredictability is their camouflage. She's not chaotic, Commander. She's surgical." That word lingered. "I want a full mind scan," Kraljek ordered. "She's already resistant to psychometric sweeps. Neural firewalls embedded through trauma conditioning. Earth soldiers were trained to weaponize memory fragmentation. Then, we cut through it. There's a pattern somewhere, a method. No species operates on pure intuition." "I don't think she's operating on intuition," Vel said. "I think she's operating on intent." That was a problem. Valerie's strategies assumed reactive enemies, pre-programmed threats, tactical loops. But she wasn't reacting. She was leading. Every disruption, every irregularity, none of it was random. It was orchestration. Madison knelt in the chamber, counting in silence. Not seconds, not breaths, frequencies. The harmonics of the room were shifting. Power was being rerouted, probably to increase suppression, limit potential feedback loops. They were adapting. Good. It meant they were nervous. She whispered, not loud enough for any recorder to pick up. 2 minutes early. They're scared. Elsewhere. On the ship, Section Leader Orathon reviewed security footage. He wasn't part of the main command structure. He specialized in counterinsurgency, embedded within alien resistance clusters across contested planets. What he saw disturbed him. The footage from Deck 8 showed Madison walking through a corridor hours before her capture. She stopped at a junction, paused, turned, and doubled back. The path she chose led directly to the engine relay shaft where the first cascade began. It looked casual. It wasn't. He reviewed it again, watched her body language. No hesitation. No scanning. She knew where to go. He accessed logs from the outpost where she was taken. Earth Defense Militia records were scarce, but her name was flagged in multiple field reports. Off-grid activity, anomalous survival rates, strategic reversals in unwinnable skirmishes. She wasn't just a soldier. She was a living variable. He opened a direct channel to Kraljek. "Commander, you need to see this. I believe this human was trained not just in resistance, but in asymmetric psychological warfare." Kraljek narrowed his eyes. "Meaning? She doesn't need to win. She just needs you to feel like you're losing." The line went silent. Back in isolation, a pulse surged through the mesh walls. Madison winced briefly as her nerves lit up in synchrony. They were testing, trying to isolate neural spikes, trigger a reflex. But all it did was confirm her suspicion. They were probing, not executing, which meant they still didn't understand her play. Her fingers twitched once. Inside the collar of her uniform, a microfilament woven into the fabric pulsed once, then went dark. A final signal had been sent. In the command tower, Vel's console erupted with alerts. Unauthorized burst transmission. Trace elements only. Origin point matches isolation 9, but there's no signal carrier. It's not a transmission, it's a resonance. Kraljek turned. What kind of resonance? Localized, self-terminating, encoded in quantum lattice tremors. Sir, that's not possible with current Valerie tech. It is with human tech, came Orathon's voice, grim through the comm. I believe she just activated a sleeper. Device. Not on the ship, somewhere else. This is bait. Madison opened her eyes again. They were coming, not a rescue. That was the wrong word. It wasn't a retrieval. It was a synchronization. The message she'd sent wasn't a call for help. It was a handshake. An object slid into Valerie's space 12 minutes later, unannounced. No warp signature, no thermal profile. A phase ship, human design, but wrong somehow. Not military, not industrial. Its surface shimmered with adaptive light absorption, impossible curves warping in and out of geometry. Vel blinked at the reading. Sir, that ship doesn't exist in any of our registries. Scan it. No emissions, no life signs. It's not there. Visual confirmation? Kraljek demanded. Confirmed, it's in our path, but sensors say otherwise. Vark arrived on the command deck, breath short. I've seen this before, during the Skellen front. They called it a ghost signature. A cloaked human decoy used to bait fleet responses into ambushes. This is no decoy, Orathon said. This is a test. The ship didn't move. It just hovered. Silent. Empty. Watching. Lock weapons, Kraljek ordered. Targeting. Systems don't hold. They slide off. Then prepare plasma scatter arrays. I want it neutralized. A technician spoke up, voice shaking. Sir, something just breached our firewall. A data fragment. It's displaying. The screen flickered. One sentence appeared. You're measuring the wrong threat. In the isolation chamber, Madison exhaled slowly. Everything was aligned. They could destroy the ship outside. That wouldn't stop what was coming. The point wasn't the phase ship. The point was the idea. Vel looked up, pale. Commander, I don't think she's trying to escape. I think she's trying to redefine what escape even means. Kraljek slammed a claw into the console. She's one human, one. That's what scares me, Orathon said. She's acting like she's not. Outside, the ghost ship vanished. Not warped, not cloaked, just gone. No ripple, no signature. One moment it was there, the next it wasn't. No trace in any spectrum. Kraljek stood silent. She wanted us to see it, Vel said. Just long enough. What for? To implant fear. In the black silence of her chamber, Madison whispered, Now they start watching shadows. The ship began its next cycle of corrections. Subsystems resynchronized. Stability returned. Lights normalized. Control reestablished. But everything felt off. Every sound, every flicker. Even the AI's voice, once sterile and neutral, carried a new hesitation. She'd corrupted nothing, and yet everything was now tainted by the idea that she could. Kraljek paced, watching the ship settle back into routine. She didn't win. She didn't have to, Orathon said. She redefined what winning was. Then what do we do now? Vel looked toward the display, toward her containment feed. Madison sat cross-legged, eyes closed as if meditating. You, listen, he said quietly, and pray she doesn't decide to teach you something new. A moment passed. Then the chamber lights failed. For 3 seconds, when they returned, the word listen was etched into the wall in scorched black script. No alarms had triggered. No systems had registered interference. No one knew how she'd done it. But all of them felt it. This wasn't over. It hadn't even started. The War Council convened in silence, a circular chamber buried deep within the Valerie flagship. The air inside was pressurized just slightly too tightly, a subtle reinforcement of control. But the command staff weren't focused on atmosphere. They were watching her, watching the feed. Madison hadn't moved in hours. She sat still, fingers resting on her knees, back straight. She radiated calm like a paradox. Utter stillness in the heart of a storm they couldn't track. "She has made no further attempts at disruption," one of the Admiralty drones said, its voice lacking conviction. "All systems have stabilized." Kral'Jek didn't respond. His jaw worked slowly, molars grinding behind scaled lips. He was thinking, but not tactically. Not anymore. The frameworks he relied on were gone. She had gutted them without lifting a weapon. Orathon stood in the shadows, arms crossed. "I recommend we change the question." Kral'Jek turned. "To what?" "It's not, how do we contain her? It's what has she already done?" Silence, not even the drone replied. She arrived alone, captured without resistance, allowed herself to be held. "You think that was for sympathy? A show of bravado? No, she's playing a longer game. Every step calculated, measured, intentional." Vel piped in. "There's another problem. The fleet net has picked up whispers. Commanders across other sectors are requesting analysis on the human anomaly. They've seen her signal. Some even report fragments echoing through subspace nodes." "You're saying this is spreading?" Kral'Jek asked. "I'm saying it's mutating, like an idea passed through a broken transmission line. Everyone's interpreting it differently. She's already a myth out there." Madison blinked slowly, once, then again. A countdown only she understood. They were getting agitated. That was good. The first mistake in any rigid hierarchy always came wrapped in overconfidence. Inside her cell, the lights adjusted again, slightly warmer this time. A kindness? No. A study. The guards outside rotated posts 20% more frequently. Now, increased heartbeat, nervous shifts. They thought she couldn't see them through the mesh, but she didn't need eyes. The body had other ways to listen. Outside her chamber, Valerie scientists worked feverishly. They didn't speak to her. They ran simulations. They launched drone scans. They sent coded light bursts measuring optical reflex latency. Everything about her was cataloged and quantified, but not understood. "Why does she not fear us?" one asked, hushed. "She doesn't expect to survive," another whispered back. "You think it's martyrdom?" "No. Worse. She expects us not to survive." The room went still. That sentiment crept its way upward. Rumors bled into military channels, and from there, into command doctrine. Officers began issuing orders with preemptive redundancy. Teams stopped operating in isolation. Everyone began to assume they were being observed, infected by paranoia. They didn't realize that was the point. She wasn't trying to escape. She was trying to replicate. Kral'Jek reviewed a new data set. A map of disruptions traced across the Valari inner territories. Minor failures, static pulses, delays in drone communication. All isolated. All explainable. Except for the timing, each mirrored the signal Madison had sent from Isolation 9. Down to the nanosecond. "These aren't coincidences," he said flatly. "They're not attacks either," Vel responded. "We're not bleeding. We're blinking. She's blinding us bit by bit." "What do we do?" Kral'Jek took a long breath. "We send a message. To her, to Earth." The transmission was encoded at the highest diplomatic level, routed through 12 relay beacons, wrapped in ceremonial language. It asked simply what Earth wanted. No answer came. Not a signal. Not even a rejection. Instead, every Valari transmission, hub within 3 sectors, received a short, looping clip. It showed Madison standing, smiling, waving, and behind her, frames blurred intentionally, movement. It wasn't her cell. It wasn't their ship. And yet it was now, time-stamped with internal Valerie chronometric tags. "No entry logs," the technician said, terrified. "No atmospheric breach, no visual tampering. It's real footage, but of an event that never occurred." Kral'Jek stared. "She's moving without moving. It's displacement, but not spatial. She's already been to where we're about to be." Orathon leaned forward. "Or worse, she's making us think she has." That single clip detonated like a cultural virus. Valerie internal cohesion, so prized, so ordered, began to unravel in whispers. Officers delayed briefings. Command staff hesitated on orders. The unspoken assumption began to take root. If the human could appear wherever she wished, then nowhere was safe. No one was untouchable. Madison sat cross-legged again, but this time her posture had changed. Not relaxed, assertive, like a commander, in her own right, presiding silently over the operations of a collapsing empire. The psychological report from Valerie High Inquisitor Jirik arrived just hours later. He had reviewed all behavioral data, scanned all available records, and concluded the following. Subject Madison Cole is not in conflict with the Empire. She is in conflict with the concept of control itself. Kraljek barely restrained a growl. And what do we do about a concept? She's eroding authority, replacing fear with questions. The most dangerous insurgents don't hold weapons. They hold mirrors. He dismissed the report with a flick of his claw. I'm done theorizing. He stormed into Isolation 9 personally. Guards tried to object. He overrode them. He needed to see her. Face to face. The chamber opened, atmosphere stabilizing in a hiss. She didn't look up. You're not special, he said coldly. You're a woman who happened to get caught. She smiled without teeth. Then why are you sweating? He hated how fast the question cut through him. Her voice wasn't mocking. It was surgical. I've read your records, he snapped. You were nobody, a ghost, a minor logistics officer, not even front line. Exactly, she said. That's why you lost the moment you brought me here. He stepped closer. You want to be studied, to be dissected. I want you to think you're doing that, she replied, while you're actually dissecting yourselves. You're bluffing. Am I? He froze. Not because she moved, but because he realized for the first time, he wasn't sure if she was speaking to him or someone else. He turned to leave. Before the doors closed, she said, This isn't a war, Commander. It's a choice. What choice? Whether your empire survives by adapting or dies pretending it didn't need to. That night, across Valerie Prime and its outposts, something subtle shifted. Recruitment centers saw drop-offs. Enforcement. Divisions began to request anonymous psychological consults. Fleet movements hesitated. Half-second pauses in otherwise flawless formations. Something invisible had taken root. A doubt. A whisper. And as it spread, so too did sightings of a second human. No name. No capture, just glimpses. One aboard a mining station, days before it suffered a catastrophic data loss. One on a diplomatic cruiser, last seen adjusting a comms panel that shortly thereafter began, transmitting encrypted human poetry. One in the Capitol Gardens of Valerie Prime itself, looking up at the stars. None caught, all vanished, and each time reports claimed they looked like her. But not quite. Kraljek watched the reports come in, one after the other. Confirmed, confirmed, confirmed. You understand what this means, Vel said quietly. She's not just a soldier, Orathon muttered. No, Kraljek said. She's a contagion. The room darkened as emergency. Lights pulsed, all systems operational. No threats detected, and yet every officer in the room now watched shadows as if they contained knives. Madison closed her eyes again. The third wave had begun, and the Empire was already cracking. The corridors of the Valerie flagship pulsed with tension. The fleet had been waiting for a command that didn't come. There were no grand speeches, no elaborate strategies, just the grinding silence of officers staring at terminals, watching. The cracks widen across their empire's defenses. Madison's absence was palpable now, as much a presence as the crew who nervously shifted in their boots. Every officer, every soldier, every mind within this vessel felt it. Their foundation had begun to rot. Kraljek stood in the command center, his eyes fixed on the holographic map of the galaxy. Sector by sector, the Empire's once flawless network of control had started to ripple. Small anomalies, disruptions in communication, sudden power outages, minute fluctuations in planetary defense shields, nothing that could be immediately traced, but everything that spoke of an unseen, hand tightening its grip, and it was human. "I was right," Vel said quietly, his voice more a statement than a question. "She's inside the system." "I didn't need confirmation," Kraljek replied, his tone grim. "What's worse is we've been blind to it from the start." "Perhaps not blind," Orathon interjected, his normally calm demeanor strained. "We've underestimated her. I don't think anyone could have predicted this." "Not underestimating," Kraljek snapped. "We failed to adapt. We've spent too long believing in our superiority." The fleet was still, but the Empire's commanders were beginning to feel the weight of doubt. Their methods, honed over millennia, had become obsolete in the face of something far more chaotic than they had ever prepared for. The logic that once kept them in control was crumbling, and it was because of one woman, Madison Cole. She wasn't a symbol. She wasn't a leader. She wasn't even the person they should have feared. She was a force. She was human nature incarnate, adaptable, unpredictable, clever beyond reason. It had taken days for Kraljek to even begin to understand the pattern of her actions. But now, in the quiet moments between the chaos, he saw it clearly. She wasn't fighting them. She was making them fight themselves. "We should have destroyed her," Kraljek said, more to himself than to the others. "One strike, one unrelenting barrage. But we didn't. And now she's turning everything we built into a maze." "What do we do now?" Orathon asked, his voice lower than usual, as if he feared that speaking too loudly would make the decision more real. The question hung in the air, unanswered, as if the mere act of saying it out loud would acknowledge their impending doom. The Valari were conquerors. They didn't plan for defeat. They didn't plan for this. "I'll deal with her," Kraljek said, his voice sharper than it had been in days. He turned to face the command center, steeling himself against the nervous energy in the room. "Prepare for a strike. We'll bring her to the negotiating table." Vel raised an eyebrow. "A table? She's already broken every rule you've set." "Not every rule. There are still some she can't break," Kraljek said, his words holding a dangerous confidence. The next few hours passed in a blur. The fleet shifted, ever so slightly, into new positions. The assault was no longer a matter of military might. It was psychological warfare, the next layer of their struggle. They needed to get to her, break her somehow, force her to reveal her hand. They had to remind her that no one escaped the Empire, but Madison didn't play by their rules. She didn't care about their empire. She didn't care about their weapons or their fleets. Her war was something different. Her battle wasn't about power. It was about control. Control of thought, control of perception. And as much as Kraljek tried to deny it, she was winning. Back in her cell, Madison sat unmoving. She had known for hours what was coming. The Empire had finally caught on. The message they would send, the show of force, none of it mattered. She had already planned for this. She had already anticipated every move, every response. It was the human way, after all. To adapt, to survive, to find a way when there seemed to be none. She had learned early on that control was an illusion, that the more tightly something was held, the more it slipped through the fingers. So she let the illusion of control play out. She let them build their walls. She let them strategize. And when the moment came, she would slip through the cracks again. The door to her cell opened. She didn't look up. Kraljek entered, flanked by his guards, his presence commanding. He didn't speak immediately, observing her with an intensity that made the air feel dense. "Madison Cole," he began, his voice steady, but there was something in it now, something tinged with uncertainty. "You've won your little games, but they end now. We will not allow your species to destabilize this empire." Madison tilted her head slightly, her lips curving into a smile that was almost pitying. "You still don't get it, do you?" He frowned, taking a step closer. "Explain." "You don't control anything here," she said simply. "You've already lost." "Don't speak in riddles, human," Kraljek growled, a flash of his old arrogance returning. "We've captured you. We've held you. We've watched you every moment. Your movements are irrelevant." Madison's smile deepened, but it Wasn't warm. It was knowing. If you think that's victory, you really don't understand what's happening. Not just with me, with all of you. He stepped forward, frustration building. You're a prisoner and you'll remain one. We'll take you to the high command and make an example of you. Your species will learn that no one, is beyond our reach. You really believe that? Madison's voice was soft, but there was a steel behind it that made Kralzek pause. You still think you control the story, don't you? That you're the ones writing the ending? But the truth is, you're just characters in it now. The empire you thought you were, that's the illusion. The walls around him seemed to tighten, his confident facade was cracking. For the first time, doubt crept in. And that, more than anything, was what unsettled him. We'll see, he said. His voice colder now, but there was something else in it. Something that didn't belong. Madison met his gaze directly. You're not in control anymore. The moment you decided to capture me, you wrote your own end. Kralzek's posture faltered slightly, a shift too subtle for anyone else to notice, but Madison caught it. She knew. She always knew. The pieces were already moving, the game already won. The Empire had nothing left to hold on to but their own failing pride. As Kralzek turned to leave, Madison's voice rang out sharp and final. Remember this, Commander. In the end, the only thing that makes an empire fall is the belief it can't. The door closed behind him, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the room was still. But Madison wasn't waiting anymore. She was already 2 steps ahead, and the galaxy was about to realize that nothing at all could stop what was coming next. The Empire's reign was over, and they didn't even know it yet.